What Sylvester Stallone created back with 1976's Best Picture winner Rocky exploded into a franchise that not only dominated the 70s and 80s, but also exists now as the wildly fun and successful legacy spin-offs that are the Creed saga. From a low-rent bum who broke thumbs for bookies,
Mr. Gazzo says I should get to 200 to break your thumb, you understand? Please.
To the heavyweight champion of the world,
It's the greatest night in the history of my life.
and now to Michael B. Jordan carrying the franchise forward.
It's your time.
It's time to rank all the Rocky flicks. The Rocky movies morphed from earnest sports dramas into, for all intents and purposes, superhero stories with heightened stakes, action, and premises. That was fitting for a franchise that started in the 70s and transitioned into the 80s. The Creed movies' tone and traction are much more in line with the 2006 legacy sequel Rocky Balboa, which sought to deliver a sadder, more grounded take while also giving the Rocky character a better ending than 1990's Rocky V.
I don't know, it's like these steps keep growing taller every year, my goodness.
Ryan Coogler's Creed brought together all the pieces from the movies that came before it, even ones with disparate tones, and delivered a knockout punch to the feels. So, what's been the best outing for the franchise? What's the weakest link? Let's use our eye of the tiger and find the true hierarchy of the Rocky Creed legacy. Rocky V, which up until that point represented the longest time between Rocky movies at 5 years, tried to bring the story back down to earth after the wildly pleasing but somewhat preposterous Rocky IV in 1985.
If he dies, he dies.
Even original Rocky director John G. Avildsen returned. Stallone had directed all the sequels up until this, so that the original Rocky magic could be recaptured. The story had Rocky returning to his humble Philly roots, albeit against his will after questionable best friend and unquestionable alcoholic Paulie lost the entire Balboa fortune. And with brain injuries preventing him from fighting to get the millions back, Rocky chose to neglect his struggling son in favor of training a new boxing hopeful, Tommy Gunn. None of this worked, and audiences rejected Rocky's fall from glory. Appalling Paulie level, 10 out of 10. Paulie at his absolute worst. He fucks up big time and refuses to own up to it. Also, Rocky Jr. at one point has to share Paulie's room, and there's no worse punishment on the planet.
Yo, Adrian! I did it!
We've now moved into, these aren't bad movies per se, but we gotta rank them territory. Rocky 2 isn't terrible, but too much of it feels like a redo of Rocky, except Rocky wins in the end and defeats Apollo Creed for the title. Much like Rocky, more importantly, much like what worked in the first Rocky, Stallone's character feels like a passive participant in his success. Like he's just living his life with Adrian when another title shot lands in his lap out of nowhere. It just doesn't work as well this time around, and you wind up feeling more sorry for Carl Weathers' Apollo, who's basically goaded into a rematch by a combination of hate mail and snarky sports journalists. Appalling Paulie level, 6 out of 10. Jealous, grouchy, too bored to sit in his sister Adrian's hospital room while she's in a coma. Although that's not the worst treatment she's gotten from him.
So now you gotta ask yourself, are you here to prove something to other people? Or prove something to yourself?
Again, we're in the not bad movie zone here with Creed 2, a movie that at time feels more like an inevitability than a genuine story given how much fans wanted a Creed-Drago generational rematch as soon as the first Creed movie hit theaters.
You know you got the fire in your gut, and I know you'll do what needs to be done.
Creed 2 does the best that it can with the whole, hey, Ivan Drago also has a son, and also he boxes too premise, while putting Adonis through many of the same sequel story points that Rocky endured in his first movie: marriage, baby, humiliating loss, etc. It was almost like a mixtape of the Rocky sequels. That being said, the most surprisingly moving elements here come from the Drago camp, and the relationship between Rocky IV's Ivan, the returning Dolph Lundgren, and his behemoth son, Victor, Florian Montino. You know what? He goes by Big Nasty, I think.
You're much smaller than your father. Come on, my pop.
Appalling Paulie level? No Paulie here. We get to move along. Thank God. 16 years after Rocky V, Stallone was back in Rocky Balboa. A way better take for the Italian stallion, and way better ending, though it eventually wouldn't be, than Rocky V was. With Rocky Balboa, which saw Stallone direct for the first time since 1985's Rocky IV, we got one of the first notable legacy sequels, helping to firmly establish that subgenre while also getting a movie that paid deep attention to its franchise's past, which we now see executed in everything from the Saw franchise to the Fast and Furious saga. It was also pretty damn good, and gave Rocky one final boxing match, which Rocky V didn't even do. In Rocky Balboa, Rocky's current life isn't great. Adrian's recently dead, Paulie's still alive, and his relationship with Rocky Jr. is strained. Hard times all around, but it wraps up the story nicely while also giving us Rocky's awesome "it's not how hard you get hit" speech.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
The antagonist here, Champ Mason Dixon, isn't that impressive, but the story's mostly about Rocky finding a new surrogate family with a grown-up Marie, who was the sassy girl from the first movie who hung out with the coconuts on the corner.
Hey, Marie, take care, you know?
Hey, Rocky.
Yo.
Screw you, creepo.
Rocky once tried to talk her out of being a bum himself, but it didn't take, and now they're both bums. The vibe here is bum.
And it doesn't matter how this looks to other people. All that matters is how it looks to you.
Falling Paulie level? 5 out of 10. At this point, everyone just accepts Paulie as an angry drunk who's usually first mistaken for a potentially violent vagrant who paints pretty yet disturbing pictures of the cows that find their way into his meatpacking plant.
I must break you.
Rocky IV was pure mid-80s adrenaline. During the thickest, soupiest part of the Cold War, the cruel, calculating Soviet Union became the villain Rocky had to topple after his former adversary turned comrade Apollo Creed was killed in the ring by super soldier pugilist Ivan Drago during the latter's first Goodwill exhibition match in the United States.
I cannot be defeated.
As the shortest running and highest earning Rocky movie to date, Rocky IV didn't have time for any new emotional territory for Rocky himself. Not when there were Survivor songs to play and montages to be shown. The first act crackles, and the death of Apollo hits hard as Drago himself. But then it's just a revenge movie. In fact, a lot of the heartfelt heavy lifting for the film is done in the Creed movies decades later, but Rocky IV is exceptional for what it is, for what it was designed to be, and an intriguing example of how much the movies had changed over the course of their run. Also, Burning Heart is a better song than Eye of the Tiger. It's all Survivor in the end, but it had to be said. We'd bet the robot on it.
Thanks, hon.
You're welcome.
Falling Paulie level? 3 out of 10. Best case Paulie scenario. Gets a robot, pushes a robot away because he's afraid to love, complains about international travel he'd never been able to do on his own, falls in the snow. Paulie's a mosaic.
What the hell you mean? What are you supposed to do? After all these years together, you don't know what to do. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Now get out there and do it.
The best of the pure Rocky sequels, Rocky III has so many rewarding elements. A great villain, a humbled champ, a big, tearful death, former enemies becoming allies, a smash hit song. It was the perfect balance between what came before it and Rocky IV a few years later. It also introduced us to two stars who, in just a short while, would become absolute 80s icons.
I'm coming after you, Balboa.
And first ever WrestleMania main eventers, Mr. T and Hulk Hogan.
Prediction?
Yes, prediction.
Pain.
The story was more elaborate, the feud was more wrestling angle-esque, and the training montages featured 100% more jubilant beach racing and crop tops. But the characters still felt like the ones we knew. The Rocky formula was perfected here, even with Paulie being revealed as a casual racist, which came as a surprise to absolutely no one. Appalling Paulie level? 9 out of 10. It's played for laughs, 1980s, but yeah, Paulie's big ol' bigot. And he implies that people he associates with in Philly are also racist. Sometimes, layers are bad.
I know you never met your father, but if he was here tonight, what would you want to say to him?
I'll probably be a Creed.
Creed from Ryan Coogler is a triumph in every aspect. It's got a fascinating new main character who gives the entire decades-long story new life and a fresh perspective, while also serving as a superb continuation of Rocky's story, while, as mentioned, digging into a lot of the emotional core that Rocky IV didn't make space for. Michael B. Jordan's hot-tempered Adonis was even reminiscent of Rocky V's Tommy Gunn, the last fighter Rocky agreed to train. So, in that regard, Creed also has elements that redeem Rocky V. Jordan is stunning as an unfocused, self-trained fighter, unable to decide if he loves or hates the father who died in the ring before he was even born.
Hey, good looking baby Creed.
Don't call me that.
Don't call you that. Don't call you what?
You just call me baby Creed. So don't call me that.
And Stallone got an Oscar nomination for his return to the role of Rocky. First time he'd been nominated for the role since the 1976 original. He finds himself with new struggles of his own. And Coogler's intimate directing style and 360 fight choreography deepens the entire world like never before. And the result is a movie that will make you sob and cheer, sometimes simultaneously. Appalling Pauly level. Again, no Pauly, and for that, we can be thankful.
Ain't gonna be no rematch. Ain't gonna be no rematch.
Since he wasn't a big-time movie star yet, Sylvester Stallone had to hustle and tussle to actually star as the lead in the script he'd written. Rocky would instantly become a cinema classic, not only winning the Oscars for Best Picture and Best Director,
and to all the Rockies in the world, I love you,
but also becoming the top-grossing movie of that year. Obviously, Rocky training for his big fight with the theme music playing and the running up the steps is legendary in the movie world, as is the third act about where Rocky goes the distance but nobly loses. But the film is amazing beyond that. It's less of a boxing movie than it is the tale of two neighborhood outcasts, Rocky and Talia Shire's shy pet shop cashier, Adrian, and their courtship.
Said you weren't born much of a body, so you better develop your brain.
Did she say that?
You! Time!
Oh yeah, and also there's Adrian's abusive, miserable brother Paulie, who will one day lead the entire family to ruin. But yes, all in all, this is a film about two sweet dorks who fall in love while fate also conspires in the background to turn one into an unlikely American hero. Still, the fight never matters as much to Rocky as Adrian does. Pauly level, 8 out of 10. We're introduced to Paulie as a brazenly angry, selfish, and insulting slob, his towering qualities. But he will get worse.
Keep out of my freaking life!
But what are your favorite Rocky and Creed movies? Well, let's discuss in the comments. And for everything else, check out what we thought of Creed 3 in our review. And for everything else, be sure to like and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.